We do know that we're going to have some issues here. One of the bigger issues may be, yes, tornadoes, but hail that can be very, very damaging too.
Absolutely. Dr. Navarro is going to be coming up, right, to talk about the dangerous threat and the large size hail we could be looking at.
Yeah, some of this could be pretty big, in excess of 2 inches. Here's what we've got in play. Really cold air that's coming in with that low pressure system heading off into the Midwest. But then we've also got some instability here. You add the cold air with the instability to get those big updrafts. We could be looking at some really big hail here across portions of central Illinois, Springfield, Champaign, maybe even as far east as Indianapolis. We could be seeing some big hail.
All right, Dr. Navarro is going to break it all down coming up. But Mike, we got to talk what's on tap. Well, this weekend, the threat for severe weather stretches into the dangerous overnight hours.
Meteorologist Stephanie Abrams has some suggestions of steps you can take now to keep you and your
Video is on. It's ready to go should you need to get those alerts, because Dr. Navarro, that threat is going to be coming after we go to bed for some. So there's the tornado threat, but then there's also the threat for large hail, which, as we know, can cause a ton of damage.
Yeah, and we're going to see some hail here that exceeds that quarter size, which is really the smallest amount that's going to cause some damage. We could be seeing upwards of golf ball sized hail in some of these areas. You take a look at the conditions for Sunday, and we've got two different factors. Very warm air heading up and spreading all the way into the Midwest. That's going to contribute. The dew points are high, but it's the cold air rushing in that's really going to make things interesting, because you're going to get a lot of instability with that really cold air up at the top level and that warm air underneath it. So if you look at a place like Champaign, Indiana, take a look at this temperature change, Alex. Right, 30 degrees here in the mid-levels from 10,000 to 18,000 feet. That's a pretty big jump.
And that tells us that we've got a very steep lapse rate, and that allows for that air to rise very rapidly. You get that very strong upward motion, and we're going to see that cold air aloft. You've got that strong motion. You're able to support the larger hail.
Yeah, that's right. So if we've got the updrafts, we've got the strong speeds, that's going to allow and increase the potential that we could see some very large hail. So Champaign, Indiana, you're one of the areas we're watching pretty closely, but in and around that too, Illinois, excuse me, could be one of the big ones, because the lapse rates here are going to be quite sufficient for producing hail.
Yeah.
But
you guys got to break it down, though, because we've got to talk more about that freezing level, which is very important.
It is. The freezing level is exactly what you think it is. Everything below that is warm enough to be liquid. Everything above that, cold enough to be frozen.
Yeah, so if you look at an average situation, you know, here's your thunderstorm cloud. Maybe this is summertime. The freezing level here just shows you when you go from liquid to ice. So as you get higher than that freezing level, that allows those water droplets to freeze, and then they run into other water droplets. Things can really accumulate. The stronger the updraft you get into this region and the longer time that you have in this frozen layer, the bigger the hail you're going to get. Then eventually you get a really strong downdraft, and that's going to pull all that hail out of the cloud. But this is not summertime. You know, now we're moving into winter. We're seeing that colder air rushing in. So with that colder air coming into the system, what that's going to do is actually bring down this freezing level quite a bit. So maybe on a normal day, Mike, it would be up here, but now it's going to be a little bit lower.
It could it conceivably be thousands of feet lower than we would see in, say, a summertime thunderstorm?
I don't think it's out of the question, not by any means.
What does that tell us? Is that basically, how I read that is, the storm then becomes a more efficient hail producer, because it doesn't have to work as hard with the updrafts in the storm to get to the freezing mark.
That's right. So we do have a bit of instability moving in with those warm temperatures near the surface, as well as the dew points. But if we lower the freezing level, that means we don't have to work as hard to get up into this frozen point. So even if you don't get a big updraft, you can still see some large hail from that. But let's say that we get a strong updraft, maybe something comparable to what we would see in the summertime. That's going to give us a lot more space, a lot more opportunity to create that bigger hail. That's why we're expecting that 2-inch range to be a big possibility in some of these areas.
And in locations where we're used to storms, but we're not always looking for them in the month of November. The Midwest becomes a target.
Yeah, so this is a big one, because, yeah, it's November. Maybe you're thinking, oh, snow and ice, you know, these kind of things. But this is a substantial threat here in some of these areas because of these factors coming into play. Again, these storms, even if they don't penetrate as high in the atmosphere, even if they're not the towering cumulonimbus that we see, they're still going to have the potential to produce some large hail.
You don't necessarily have to have a 50 or 60,000 foot storm in order to produce hail.
No, not this time.
Dr. Navarro, thank you. Alex?
All right. Well